Brennan Manning wrote, "Christianity is not an ethical code. It's a love affair, a spirit-filled way of living aimed at making us professional lovers of God and people." My guests exemplify those words. Tim Huff is well known to our viewers. We've featured all three of his award-winning books during his 24 years with Youth Unlimited, advocating for those who are homeless, marginalized, and living in poverty. He founded Light Patrol in downtown Toronto. His new venture is the Hope Exchange. We're going to be hearing all about it. Singer-songwriter Steve Bell from Winnipeg has been called the best-kept secret in Canadian music. With 16 CDs and a list of awards and nominations that truly fill a page, it's strange that he's flown under the radar in terms of the music industry and media recognition. It's certainly time he visited here, and we are so grateful for the, where is it? Kindness, a kind of a theme for this segment, and certainly the new CD. You Renaissance guys, it's just a delight to have you here together. How long have you been friends?
Well, we've known each other since the 80s, since Youth for Christ years. When were you?
Yeah, late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, and then when we started in the early 2000s planning the next street level conference in Ottawa, we knew there was only one musician we were looking for, and then Steve and I started hanging out and became more than doing that. It became hanging out as buddies.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm right in saying you're singing off the same song sheet. You have the same biblical worldview, how you live out your Christian faith in different arenas. Mm-hmm. You're both storytellers, mm-hmm. Yeah. One in words and one in song. Yeah. It just was meant to be.
You know, I remember the first time hanging out with Tim when he brought me in to do this conference in Ottawa, and so we met for a coffee on the highway somewhere. I forget where it was. And it was one of those kinds of things. Every once in a while, sort of, you look at someone in the eye and you kind of think, okay, this is an old friend, even though you don't really know each other. But there's just so you get a few of these in your life. You know, where there's just there's a
kindred spirit.
There's a kindredness, yeah. There's a something about the souls that they connect, and
that's kind of ironic too that we'd go there, because you've spelled kindness in a really funny way, Steve. Well, what's that about?
Well, when I was looking for an album title for this particular CD, someone suggested I call it Kindness, and I didn't like that because it seemed like too soft of a word and too sentimental, and you know, kind of like calling your album Niceness. I don't, like, you know what I mean? But then I was lying in bed, and all of a sudden it occurred to me that the root of the word kind is kin. And all of a sudden it's a very different word. You know, it's got nothing to do with being nice. It's a deeply internalized sense of kinship.
And that related.
Yeah, badly. So when we're kind to one another, it's not nice. It's really, to be truly kind is to really understand that you aren't like my sister. You kind of are my sister. When you see that person on the street, they couldn't be like your mother. They are your mother. You know, and Jesus said this. You know, who are my mothers, my brothers? You know, this amazing capacity to sort of really understand that all that God has created, there's a dynamism of kinship behind absolutely everything, and that goes beyond even interpersonal, because we're talking now field and streams and swallows and, you know, turtles and all of creation. And of course it makes sense for the Christian worldview, or the Christian God view, is that God is kind, kinship, in God's very self. You know, you got the Father and the Son. There's kinship in the Trinity, and we've been made in that image.
All lovely thoughts. Tim, you write to say this in so many ways. I'm just thinking of Dancing with Dynamite, Celebrating Against the Odds. Your latest book, all of these award winners. Let me just show the other two, just so you know. This is the same guy who wrote The Cardboard Shack Beneath the Bridge, and you did the illustrations for this children's book. And Bent Hope, A Street Journal. Again, more wonderful stories about finding God's beauty and grace in unlikely places.
Yeah, Steve actually wrote the benediction for that one as well, so I think there's just a good harmony between what we're trying to say and, to some extent, try to step outside of, we want to live in our faith in a real way, but we want it to mean as much to people who don't share our faith as to those who do. And how do we speak that in words and in actions and in our lives that actually step way outside of the normal standards that a lot of people would think a Christian writer or a Christian musician might exist in.
See, I just finished reading, I'm sorry, Steve, I just finished reading this book by Brennan Manning, you know, who wrote Abba's Child and The Ragamuffin Gospel. A former Franciscan priest, and he said, if the relentless tenderness of Jesus is to lay hold of us, our coherent sense of self must be rooted not in illusory differences, but in our shared humanity. I thought of you guys right away.
Beautiful.
That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Well, Tim is particularly, I mean, Tim, so much of what Tim says is just actually based on his capacity to observe that reality and document it in stories, you know, like all of his stories about meeting beautiful people who most of society wouldn't, you know, use that prefix, you know, for, but just the capacity to sort of see the dignity of the other, and the gift of the other, you know. And what I enjoy about Tim's books and how it's even changed how I see other folks, it's not about we can make you beautiful eventually, or if you conform or whatever, but that you are as you exist before me right now, God's gift to me in the moment. And the greater capacity I have to see that, the more blessing I get out of it. You know, yeah. So, I mean, Tim really, I look at people differently since I've been reading his books. I can't look at people the same way.
Well, for those 450 people who attended the launch of Dancing with Dynamite, we have a couple of pictures. Now, they're just my pictures, but they're the only way I can share the moments with you. And so we're going to the Ontario Science Centre where we gathered, and part of that evening, well, you all participated in reading from the book, and Steve, you and Mike Jansen playing. Oh, it was something else. But here's a moment that's hard to even describe, and I'll have to let you describe it, Tim.
The dancers there are from L'Arche. They have a dance troupe called the Spirit Movers, and so there would be 4 of their community who are living with disabilities, 2 in wheelchairs, 2 not, and then these volunteer staff of dancers that dance with them. So they were just a great demonstration of this idea of celebrating against the odds, which is the byline of the book, right?
These are precious people who can't do anything to practically contribute to society. And I bet there wasn't a dry eye in the place.
Oh, no. Yeah, it was awesome.
Amazing. And I think we were all touched by this message, which leads us into your new thrust. You're pioneering a new work, the Hope Exchange, which we were introduced to a little bit as well on November 5th.
Yeah, and lots has developed since then. The Hope Exchange is an interesting thing because it's a little bit sophisticated. Again, it doesn't quite fit into what people think of. Do we use the word ministry, or does that make people feel outside of it? Endeavor, if we use the word charity, does that become too stagnant? But really, you know, our theming is bringing hope to the hope givers, identifying the people who are working on the front lines of street workers, nurses in palliative care, developmental service workers and volunteers, people who engage and people who are really in God's kingdom, but we don't always shape them in God's kingdom. They're right in the center, and they come alongside them. How do we keep them healthy? I mean, I came close to a couple of nervous breakdowns working on the street, and I went to the hope givers in my world and came to them. Even that's what Steve is. I mean, Steve and Nancy, to begin the Hope Exchange, the final underline to it was I flew to Winnipeg and sat at their kitchen table and said, here's what I'm thinking. Tell me what you think of this. And they spent a whole night just at the kitchen table with me, made me a steak and had dinner, and then talked me through it and stuff like that. And so that's kind of, and then the presence.
Put a dollar sign on that kind of encouragement at the right time.
Friendship or encouragement. And so how do we actually create a forum for that? And, you know, there's all kinds of legalities, and it's a real charity, and there's a children's education program attached, and there's a direct service piece attached where we can get people to get involved in things that they've been nervous about trying, working with a certain group of people, and how can I actually get close to that, so we create partnerships.
This is something we need to blanket the country. This needs to be big.
Yeah.